All right, welcome back to Doctrines 2. We're going to continue on our study in systematic theology on the doctrine of sin, or Harmartiology, the Greek word hamartia, which means sin or to miss the mark. So the study of Harmartiology, the study of sin. We're going to continue on with that discussion. Last week we looked more at the universals of what sin is, and where did we get our sin nature, and the inherited nature of sin from Adam, and the imputed nature of sin from Adam. But I want to talk a little bit more today about actual sins, not just in our lives as believers, but just actual sins and how they operate in life in general. I want to talk about a couple of things. First of all people are sinful before God. And I think we proved this last week with understanding that in a conceptual nature that all sin comes from Adam. We inherit as human beings. But I want you to also understand that all people are sinful. Not just that they are sinners and guilty before God, but that we all prove that we are guilty before God. Romans 3, 9, and 10, that there's no one righteous, no, not one. Romans 3:23, that for all have sinned. And, of course, 1 John 1, if we say that we have no sin, then we are liars, and the truth of God is not in us. So, therefore, all people are sinful. We all do wrong things. It's not just that we are sinners by our nature, but that we can somehow suppress that. We all prove ourselves to be guilty before God by sinning. All right? So just so we all understand that all human beings are sinful, meaning that we all sin. And to what degree of sin are we committing sins on a regular basis? That leads to the next question. Is it possible that there are some who have less ability to do what's right, or more ability to do what's right? This really comes from Pelagius, who was a 3rd century heretic who believed that people could take the first steps, or were responsible to take the first steps toward God in faith. We might call this Arminianism, which comes much later, more in the time of Calvin, and then on into the time of Augustine, and even all the way up until Calvin, still with us today in many denominations. This idea that we are somehow capable and therefore responsible to take the first steps toward God. But of course, this is contrary to Romans chapter 3, that says no one seeks after God. Also Ephesians chapter 2 verse 1, that says that we are all dead in our trespasses and sins. The idea that we're only responsible for what we're able to do is rather contrary to Scripture, because we're not able to do anything of our own. That if left up to ourselves, we would be as sinful as we could be. And it's only through the common grace, which we'll be talking about here in a few weeks when we start getting into soteriology, or the doctrine of salvation, that it's only through God's common grace to mankind that we are not as sinful as we could be. And we touched on that a little bit last week when we talked about the total depravity, or total corruption of men. The true measure of our responsibility is not our ability, but rather the perfection of God. That God himself is our measure of holiness. And of course, we see that we are not capable of being holy as he is holy. Matthew 5:48, he says that your holiness needs to exceed that of the Pharisees. Of course, the Pharisees were very self-righteous, very righteous people. They were quite a bit free from impurity and sin of that nature, and yet it caused them to be pompous. It caused them to be self-reliant and arrogant in their in their perfection. So that means that they were even more sinful in that direction. So our responsibility is in relationship to who God is, not based on our ability. So that's all we have for this video. We'll continue on the next.